Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 RBC Canadian Initial Research Show. Hopefully you had a very good Charles Schwab Challenge. Goodness gracious, you can tell what kind of weekend it's been. Unfortunately, a lot of very sobering news at the Charles Schwab with Grayson Murray passing away. So all of us in the community are wishing his family all the best and hopes and prayers to them. Hopefully you had a very successful Charles Schwab Challenge. Myself, it was not a very good one. Did not have a lot of good advice for you all. I did say that fading Scotty Scheffler was a dangerous play. For 2 rounds, it looked pretty strong. Especially after day one, and then he goes out and shoots 68-64 on Friday and Saturday, puts himself right back in the tournament. And, that I just wasn't going to play well if he played, or if I wasn't going to win if he was going to play well. Tom Hoagie played well. I was nowhere near him. Of course, I was nowhere near the winner, Davis Riley. So if you had Davis Riley, especially in an outright, what an amazing pick. So if you had success for the Charles Schwab Challenge, whether you had Davis Riley in the outright, you used him in DFS, you had all the Scheffler, you had Keegan Bradley, who I mentioned a little bit, had all of those wonderful plays for the week, and you avoided the Harris Englishes, the Taylor Moores, the Austin Eckroats, and those plays. Hopefully you were away from them. And we moved to a fairly prestigious tournament, the RBC Canadian, which has had some strong fields in the past. A little bit of a fall off here the past couple of years, but still a very fun tournament. I think everybody remembers Nick Taylor draining the 8 bajillion mile putt last year to win his home country's Open. So we're going to be digging in quite heavily into the course this evening, as it's a brand new course for me. I know they've used Hamilton before, but it's a brand new course for me. So we have a lot to get into. Let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. If you are a member at Fantasy National, you're not going to have to listen to a moron like me give you his suggestions and his recommendations. You're going to be able to have the power in your own fingertips to make the right decisions week in and week out. You're going to have Davis Riley at the Charles Schwab. You're going to play Scotty Scheffler. You're going to do all these things if you're a member over at Fantasy National. So go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I post research every Monday around the PGA Tour. Probably not going to have anything tomorrow since Hamilton is brand new for me. I was not following golf in 2019, which is the last time the RBC Canadian was held at Hamilton. And with it being far enough back, it's been 5 years now. The courses went through a renovation or a restoration. We just don't have any data that we're going to be looking at this evening. And I'm not going to be posting any research tomorrow since the RBC Canadian generally rotates courses, much like the U.S. Open, the PGA Championship, and whatnot. So no research for this week, but normally I will have research every Monday afternoon. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage in the DFS contests I play. That comes out Wednesday evening after the DFS Tactics show. You would have seen my betting card for the Charles Schwab Challenge. I was fairly close. I felt pretty good after day one with Brian Harman and Seabez playing well, and then things just kind of went downhill from there. Of course, no Davis Riley, anything to that effect. But if you want to see those pieces of information, then give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation. He continues to update you throughout the week with his own version of recent form and course history. And if you're a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday as we continue the DFS talk over there after the Calls DFS Tactics show. So you don't want to miss out on that. Go show him some support. Follow him over on social media. And then lastly, we are live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all. I've seen a couple of comments down there. Derek, I'll get to you after the intro. But I'd love to hear from you all. Again, let me know of any success that you've had, especially with the Charles Schwab or anything else, whether you're playing fantasy baseball, maybe you're in the fantasy, or maybe you're in the NBA playoffs. So let me know of any success that you've had. What do you know of Hamilton? And the host course for the RBC Canadian? Who do you think is the favorite? Is it clearly Rory? Do you think a Canadian could sneak up and perhaps be the favorite for the tournament? So we'd love to hear from you all in that regard. So let's do our initial research for the 2024 RBC Canadian Open. And we start as we always do, as soon as my camera will center, at the GCSA tournament fact sheet. Good evening, Derek. Thanks for jumping in chat. It's much appreciated. Was Davis Riley a good course fit or just a fluke? Never even thought it was a possibility. I mean, this tells you everything you need to know. He was 95th out of 132 in my rankings coming into the tournament. I was nowhere near him. In fact, I don't know what side of the draw he was on. If he was on the good half of the draw, meaning the Thursday AM, Friday PM, then certainly an option to get some uniqueness, which he was not very widely owned. I was nowhere near him. Do not feel bad in that regard. In fact, I can bring up the rankings from last week. We can see how well he had played Colonial, if that is something that you're interested in. But basically, he was 95th out of 132 for me, so I was nowhere near Davis Riley. And my DFS was a disaster, although I knew the risk that I was taking coming into it. We move our attention forward to the RBC Canadian Open. We are in Ancaster, Ontario for the RBC Canadian Open. Like I said, this course hosted the RBC Canadian Open in 2019. And if you are a long-time viewer, if you have been following me now for a little while, you will know that I generally only go back 5 years in terms of data. Disasters, right? Hey, good evening, Darnell. Thanks for jumping in chat. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of us did not have a very, very strong week. Like I was mentioning, I was nowhere near Davis Riley. I understood the risk that I was taking by fading Scotty Scheffler. And with him shooting as poorly as he did day one, I felt pretty good. And then he comes out and does what Scotty Scheffler does and put himself right back in the tournament. So unfortunately, it doesn't sound like many of us had much success. So we're going to try to turn it around this week for the RBC Canadian Open. As I was mentioning, if you have followed me for any length of time, I only go back 5 years. And while the 2019 RBC Canadian would be the cutoff, meaning I normally would include this, the course has went through a renovation, and with the tournament changing sites every year, I just don't feel comfortable going back to 2019 and really digging into the results there. Yes, Rory wins the RBC Canadian to 2019, so there's a little bit of history there. But as a statistician, as a data analyst, I just don't feel comfortable putting a whole lot of weight into it. Now, certainly we'll look into the prior leaderboard in 2019 tomorrow in the Data Dive show and see what kind of played well and whatnot. But more so tonight, we're just going to go through the Pro Visualizer look of Hamilton because it has went through a renovation. It's been lengthened a little bit. And because I did not follow golf in 2019, this is just going to be good for me as I'm not terribly familiar with Hamilton Golf and Country Club. It's originally designed by Harry S. Colt. I don't recognize his name on any other PGA Tour course. And then, as you see, renovated in 2019. My guess is essentially after the completion of play of the RBC Canadian Open. Hamilton is a par 70, measuring just over, or I guess I should say, just under 7,100 yards. So a fairly short course, but it has been lengthened. As the last time Hamilton was seen in 2019, it played right at 7,000 yards, based on my understanding. So they have lengthened it a little bit since then. You see the stimp at 11 to 12. This would be average to maybe fast, and it is my understanding that the greens did indeed play average speed in 2019. The greens are about PGA Tour average in terms of size, but they will not play that large. There's quite a bit of undulation in these greens, and there's quite a bit of tiering and sloping to these greens, as I understand it. So they will definitely play smaller than their listed size. Quite a bit of fairway, but these fairways do appear to be pretty narrow, especially the further from the tee box that you go, as there's a lot of dog legs, a lot of forced layups, as we'll see when we go through Pro Visualizer. Quite a bit of rough, and again, from my understanding, is that if the players did not find the fairway in 2019, the rough was pretty darn difficult to play out of. There is no length given here, but it is a bluegrass and fescue mix, if you will. But last time or the tour was at Hamilton, I believe the rough was pretty difficult to play out of. The greens are V8 creeping bentgrass, so we're just going to be looking at bentgrass. Just like last week in the 007 James Bond bent that Colonial had installed, I do not recognize this specific subtype of bentgrass anywhere else on the PGA Tour. So we're just going to be looking at bent greens in terms of putting. The fairways bent, and a little bit of overseed, POA and whatnot. The 2019 renovation reconstructed all 27 holes, as there is actually 3 sets of 9-hole routing here on the property. But the RBC Canadian Open is specifically using, I believe it's the West and the South 9s for the tournament. New irrigation system. Yeah, there you go. Play is on the West and the South courses. So that's a look at the Hamilton Golf and Country Club from a GCSAA tournament fact sheet. Again, we don't have anything in terms of the number of holes that water comes into play, so we'll have to be mindful of that as we go through Pro Visualizer. Nothing to do with Architect. This is a fairly short course, although it has been lengthened since the last time it was seen. Still a fairly short course, so we might be looking at some short course metrics here. And these greens, the greens and the fairways, I should say, have quite a bit of undulation and tiering to them. Lots of downhill shots, slope, like side hill lies, uphill shots, downhill shots, all that kind of stuff. So really going through the terrain of Ancaster, Ontario. So that is a look at the tournament fact sheet for this year's RBC Canadian Open. We're going to now go to Pro Visualizer and take a look at Hamilton on a hole-by-hole basis. Now, again, this has been lengthened. So we just saw the GCSAA tournament fact sheet. You see, Pro Visualizer lists this at 6,900 yards. So really, the official yardage from the GCSAA is almost 200 yards longer. So I don't know how up to date Pro Visualizer is, but at least we'll be able to get an idea of how certain holes play, where the water comes into play, anything of that nature. And of course, I have the hole composition chart and estimated proximity in Microsoft Excel based on Pro Visualizer we'll cover as well. So the par 70 from the west and south courses, there is one par 5 on each 9. There, 537 and 548. So pretty darn short par 5s. Whatever length there is in the course is in the par 3s. 222, 205, 235, and then 185. So similar to Colonial, a lot of the length of the course comes into the par 3s. And there are quite a bit of shorter par 4s. Quite a bit. Nothing as short as 318. Again, they have lengthened a lot of these holes by various yardages. And I do have the official scorecard available, or at least, you know, the course composition chart based on the official scorecard as well. So we'll take a look at both of them. But there's a look at how each 9 is kind of set up. Starts off with 3 par 4s each. You got 2 par 3s on each side, 1 par 5 on each side. So let's go ahead and jump into each individual hole, if you will. So the par 4 first, slight dogleg left. But notice you've got about, or it says, a 255 drive. So the more aggressive players probably will try to carry this bunker, and it will all depend on how wide these fairways are, because as I mentioned, apparently the rough is pretty darn difficult to play out of. So right off the bat, you have a choice on how aggressive you want to be. Of course, if you take driver, take on the bunker, and find the fairway, you're going to be left with a very, very short iron or wedge into what looks like a very good scoring opportunity. Otherwise, you're left with a more mid-length approach shot. No water on that one. Hole 2, again, slight dogleg right, fairly straightforward. Telling you, hitting 3 wood, at least for the professionals, hitting 280. I'm thinking this is going to be a fairly, straightforward hole. Again, more aggressive players might try to hit driver and carry the bunker here on the right. But nothing seemingly too difficult about it, except for perhaps the tiered green and the runoffs around it. But no water yet. Very short par 4. So 250-yard drive. So this does look like a little bit of a meandering creek here. On the 3rd. But 250, 300 is here. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit for you all. There we go. So 300, looks like the run out might be 310. So looks like a little bit of precision here off the tee, as this might be some native area as well. So do you want to lay it far back? Do you want to try to find this, or do you want to find this intermediate zone of a fairway to attack a green that is protected what looks like by a pretty deep bunker? So a lot of decisions have to be made off the tee on how you're going to be attacking Hamilton, it appears, at least, especially in the first 3 holes. The par 5 fourth doesn't look like water's into play, as it's pretty far off here to the right. Now, if I'm playing, it's definitely in play. But pretty straightforward here, and a pretty short par 5. So as long as players are in this fairway and not blocked out by the trees here on the right, looks like this green's attackable in 2. the very short par 4 fifth, this has been lengthened. So I don't think it's playing 318 yards. I think the official scorecard yardage is 348, I believe. But still, players like Rory, I don't think he's in the field this week, but Ludwig Aubert, Luke List, these long hitters off the tee, they would still be able to drive that green. So perhaps a drivable par 4 here. Par 3 sixth, pretty long, just kind of straightforward, long, 222 yard par 3 on the 6th. The 7th, again, dogleg left, looks like premium on accuracy. Appears to be the case here. Not a whole lot of protection, or at least what you would think of as protection for these greens so far. Maybe 1 or 2 bunkers. I believe the protection of the greens at Hamilton is the tiering and the steep runoffs around the green. I don't think they have a lot of rough very close to the green. I think it's a lot of closely mown area and steep runoffs. So imagine like a dome shape or a cap. Seems that is the feeling that I get, or that's the impression I get from reading descriptions here of Hamilton. Par 3 8th, again, pretty straightforward, fairly long par 3 here. Most bunkering we've seen in terms of protection. And then the par 4 9th, straightforward. How much do you want to take on this bunker, I guess. Don't think that's going to be reachable for most players, as it's looking like it's about 340 out, maybe the biggest of hitters. Par 4 10th. I don't know what's going on with the satellite imaging here. Maybe this was taken during the renovation, but pretty straightforward short par 4 here. The 11th, probably what looks like the most difficult hole. Pretty long, 471 yard, pretty severe dogleg left as well. Looks like tree protecting the left side of the fairway, which could block out or stop some errant tee shots. But if players are finding the fairway or maybe carrying it over the tree, looks like nothing terribly difficult. The 12th, again, another short par 4 straight away. They are having you lay back a little bit, as I imagine this looks like it could be some maybe native area or something. But looks like, probably tree lined, so maybe a little bit narrow. 13th, long par 3, 235. Again, not sure what's going on with the satellite imaging. I can't control that, but I know that's not water. So, but just a long par 3 there. 14th, straightaway par 4 again. Nothing looks terribly complicated. It just looks like you have a lot of decisions to make off the tee on how aggressive you want to be. 15th, again, looks like a pretty severe dogleg, but professionals can probably try to carry these fairway bunkers and rough here, and if they do, they're going to be in a much better shape. Saying maybe only 80 to 90 yards instead of 130 to 150. But again, pretty straightforward there. Just a dogleg right. Par 3 16th. Pretty straightaway par 3 it looks like. 17th, your par 5 on the back 9. Again, seems attackable in 2, so long as the player's in the fairway. 280 here. Looks like you're going to have to thread the needle a little bit in terms of hitting your driver. So that way you're avoiding some what look like bunkers here. How wide are the fairways? From what I understand, I think it's fairly narrow. This seems like it's probably the best visual. You're gonna have to thread the needle on this. Looks like there's some strategic bunkering here on this par 5, but it's been fairly common throughout that it just appears to be there's a lot of decisions to make off the tee based on how aggressive you want to be. It does appear that the course narrows the further you go, and it seems like we've only had water really on one hole that would come into play. So it seems like the bigger hitters, again, see 2019 Rory winning, seems like the bigger hitters, if they are accurate, are going to have a pretty big advantage cutting off a lot of this course. That's what it seems like. Then finally, hole 18, again, one of these forced layups, 275 here. It doesn't appear that, I don't think any or very, very few players would be able to try to cover this portion, this native area or rough. Again, to a green that is, tiered and sloping and steep runoffs around it. So there's a look at Hamilton in terms of the Pro Visualizer view of it. So before we go to Fantasy National, let's go ahead and bring up the course comparison, the hole composition chart and the estimated proximity. Now these are from Pro Visualizer, just understand that. These are from Pro Visualizer, and the course has been lengthened, so you'll see that I've actually got two listings here, and I'll go through both of them. This first listing is from Pro Visualizer. So you see each of the par 3s measuring here, one pretty medium length, two long, and one very long par 3. And I believe that is the same on both. So the official scorecard has the same, at least in terms of bucket numbers, that Pro Visualizer has. So the par 3s, we can feel fairly confident that they're going to play to like this: one medium length, two long, and one very long par 3. You see on Pro Visualizer there's the 318 yard par 4. I believe it's been lengthened to about 346, 348, something around there. So not necessarily as drivable for the majority of players, but still probably reachable for the biggest of hitters, i.e. Rory. Two shorter par 4s, but the majority of our par 4s per Pro Visualizer were 400 to 450. We only had one from 450 to 500. Now the official scorecard, that changes. That changes a little bit. We still have that one, very short, semi-drivable for the longest of hitters. The biggest change on the official scorecard comes here, where it reduces from 8 to 5, and that one 474, I think, was what it was in Pro Visualizer, actually is more than 500 per the official scorecard. But still, the majority of our par 4s are still coming into 400 to 450 range. So I think that's probably where we're going to have quite a bit of emphasis early on in our week. Maybe a little bit more in the 450 to 500s, but even so, most of those, even on the official scorecard, most of those are under 470. So you could see those playing in the 400 450 bucket when they move tees and pins around. And then both par 5s per Pro Visualizer. Let me get out of the way here. What's the easiest way to get out of the way? That way. Both par 5s measured 500 to 550 on Pro Visualizer. The official scorecard, there is one that measures slightly over 550. But we're not dealing with anything too terribly long in terms of par 5s. So there's a look at the whole composition chart, and we'll also take a look at this in Fantasy National, just to give you an idea of how all of this is set up, because Fantasy National is different as well. It still has the 2019 setup, not the renovated yardages. So there's a look at the whole composition chart. Estimated proximity. I'm not going to pay any attention to this. Yes, the majority of them fall from 150 to 175, but again, remember, Pro Visualizer had a lot of forced layups. Some of the professionals are going to take on that bunkering and leave themselves shorter approaches. But I wanted to give you this information just in case you wanted to have it. There are one, maybe two true 75 to 100 yard approach shots. Again, if a player does not go for that 348 yard par 4 green off the tee, it's going to leave them a very short wedge. And then there was another par 4 due to the forced layup that was very short. Two of these are definitely in the 200 plus, because Pro Visualizer sets up every par 5 as a 3-shot hole regardless. So two of these, maybe even three of these, will come into the 200 plus. Some of these will come down into here for the aggressive players that want to take on the bunkers. So again, I'm not putting any weight into proximity this week. Not going to factor it into my mixed condition model, but I wanted to give you that information so you all have it. All right, with that, I'll go ahead and save that just in case. And we'll now move to Fantasy National and the players in the field this week. The headliner, of course, being Rory. He is not the technical defending champion since Nick Taylor won the RBC Canadian Open last year. But the last time the RBC Canadian was played at Hamilton, Rory won. And won going away. I think he won by 5 or 6 shots. So he is the headliner in the field. Tommy Fleetwood is here. Sahith Theegala comes back. Of course, you have all of the premier Canadian players playing in their home open. Corey Connors, Nick Taylor, Taylor Pendrith, Shane Lowry is also here. So you've got a few big names, but kind of a weaker field compared to what we have seen, especially recently, which is no surprise considering starting next week with the Memorial, we have 3 straight big events. We have the Memorial, which is a signature event. Then we have the U.S. Open at Pinehurst. And then in 3 weeks, we have the Travelers, which is the week after the U.S. Open. So 3 big weeks coming up on the PGA Tour. So a lot of players are deciding not to play this week. Let's see. So, in 2024, in the last 24 rounds, our top performers: Rory, Alex Noren, Akshay Bhatia, Tommy Fleetwood, Mackenzie Hughes, Sahith Theegala, Mav McNeely, Ben Griffin, Matty Schmid, Corey Connors, Kevin Tway. Those are your top 10 in terms of total performance in the last 24 rounds. Something else we will definitely want to probably take a look at is perhaps performance on short courses. Yes, this course has been lengthened. It is only a par 70, measuring at 7,100 yards, so it's not necessarily the shortest of courses, but it's not long either by any stretch. So, in the past 2 years, I'm going to extend this to 36 rounds just to give enough of a sample size. In the last 2 years, on short courses, our top performers have been Eric Cole, Sahith Theegala, Sam Burns, Seamus Power, Tom Kim, Mark Hubbard, Ryo Hitsatsune, Bo Hostler, Adam Scott, and JJ Spawn are our top 10 in terms of performance on short courses. There have been 2 field changes since the field came out Friday evening. Chris Goddard and Jimmy Stenger have decided not to play this week at the RBC Canadian Open. So I'm not sure how much research you have done regarding potential lineups and wagers, but just be aware these two players have decided not to play. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the course breakdown. Not a whole lot we can. We can take a look at it, see how the different shots factored in and whatnot. This scorecard again is from the 2019 RBC Canadian, so it has been lengthened. Just be aware of that. Having said that, we can still look and see how relatively difficult the course is, where some of your good birdie chances and perhaps where some trouble is. So our 9th and 10th most difficult holes, 9th is there. The 10th is just slightly above par. We get to the 11th most difficult hole is where par falls. That would tend to be an average difficulty for sure. Let's take a look at the easiest end of the spectrum, the easy holes. Both of the par 5s are going to play pretty darn easy. 3/10 of a shot under par, half a shot under par. The back 9 par 5 played extremely easy. We had several good scoring opportunities the last time we were here too. The semi-drivable par 4 5th played 2/10 of a shot under par. But beyond that, you'll start getting into where holes are not necessarily difficult, just 400ths, 500ths under par, 800ths under par. Whereas at the other end of the spectrum, you do have a couple of pretty difficult holes. The par 4 18th played to a quarter of a shot over par, 2/10 of a shot over par, 1500ths. So we're looking at about an average difficulty here, at least how it played in 2019. We moved to the strokes gained by shot type, at least in 2019. It was all about the putting. As you can see here. Approach really wasn't that much of a factor. Just all in the putting, which is weird to see, but it is what it is. Much the same for our top 5s. And then for Rory, to be expected. He was pretty good all around, but he really excels off the tee. That is his game, and he happened to putt well that week, and he wins. But I think there's more to gain in the fact of our top 5s and our top 10s, but all of them seem to really, really excel on the greens. That's where they were gaining all of their shots, their strokes gained against their competitors. So definitely something that we're going to want to be mindful of. Going to strokes gained by hole by par, even though there's still only 2 par 5s, they are the best scoring opportunities here. And then followed by the par 4s, we go to our top 5s. Again, much the same. And then for Rory, probably factoring in some eagles here in these par 5s. He played the par 3s well, but generally speaking, with 12 par 4s, we're probably going to want to put a whole lot of weight into the par 4s. And I will be interested to see the statistics for the Charles Schwab tomorrow when it gets loaded into Fantasy National. See how accurate I was in my assessment of Colonial. Based on my DFS performance, I wasn't. So I'll be interested to see and to critique myself tomorrow when that comes through. So Fantasy National, how the course composition looked in 2019. You'll note that all of the par 3 or 3 of the 4 par 3s measured under or in between 200 and 225. So they didn't have a 225 plus in 2019. Again, remember, they have lengthened various holes here. So one of these par 3s definitely is 225 plus. We still have that very short par 4, about 348. 2 shorter par 4s, again, the majority of our par 4s will fall in between 400 and 450. How many is up for debate. The official scorecard has it at 5. Pro Visualizer had it at 8. In 2019, it was 7. So, just be aware that the majority of our par 4s fall into this range. We do have a few or a couple longer ones. And according to the official scorecard, there is one par 4 that's 500 plus. And then each of the par 5s will measure on each side of 550. One below 550, one above 550. If you are interested or curious about it, I'm not going to put any weight into this, but the majority of the approach shots in 2019 actually came from 200 plus due to the forced layup nature of a lot of the holes. I do think it's going to benefit some of the bombers if they want to take on some of those challenges and if they are accurate. Again, see Rory in 2019 gained about 1.8 strokes off the tee per round. Now, we all know that he is one of the best off the tee players in professional golf, but the opportunity is still there for the bombers to really overpower this course so long as they're accurate. So that's something that we could take a look at throughout the week. The cut line in 2019 was -1. Again, that would be pretty much right at average. You had 18% birdies, 15% bogeys, more holes played under par than over par. So probably on the easier end of average, but I still think we're looking at average in terms of difficulty. And of course, we'll take a look at the forecast starting tomorrow. It's interesting that you asked Derek earlier in the show regarding how wide the fairways are. My understanding is that even with some of the forced layup nature of some of these holes, that it is still somewhat difficult to find the fairway. Not necessarily as prevalent as, say, Augusta, but imagine rolling terrain like that where you have a lot of side hill lies, you've got a lot of blind approach shots, you got a lot of downhill approach shots. There is a lot of terrain and sloping, not just on the greens, but in the fairways. So you look at this driving accuracy, a little bit less than 55 or right at 55%. That's pretty low. That's pretty darn low. At least it was in 2019. So it seems like these fairways, combination of not being very wide and the rolling terrain, makes it pretty difficult to find them. So it seems like accuracy will probably be something we want to focus on this week. And because the rough was what sounds like pretty difficult to play out of in 2019, greens were hard to hit in comparison as well. 62.5% in 2019 versus roughly 65 and some change, almost 66%, the average tour event. So greens also were hard to hit in 2019. Now, players were very successful in scrambling. There isn't a lot of rough around the greens. They're going to be playing from short grass. Imagine something similar to some Open Championship venues where you've got a lot of, say, fairway cut or closely mown areas as opposed to rough around the greens. That is what Hamilton has. So we're not going to be looking at anything in terms of scrambling. Maybe some around the green because the greens are difficult to hit, but nothing to do with scrambling because it is pretty easy to scramble here, or at least it was in 2019. 3 putts per round, not a big factor. Maybe a half a 3-putt per round. So a player averages maybe 1 to 2 3-putts on the week. Distance right at tour average, and I imagine a lot of this is probably being inflated due to Rory, because there are a lot of forced layups here at Hamilton. So with the distance being, I would consider, less than the average tour event, and with the difficulty of finding the fairways, shows you that we're probably going to want to focus on the accuracy portion fairways gained, good drives gained. Maybe off the tee, because I don't know how much distance is really going to play a factor, although it's probably going to benefit those who are long and accurate, but more so leaning towards the accuracy portion of off the tee this week. And then proximity right at 30 feet versus a little over 29 at the average tour event, so a little bit further away if you're hitting the green in regulation. So there's a look at 2019 Hamilton in terms of a scorecard and graphical view. Again, the course has been lengthened a little bit since 2019, so we don't want to take this as gospel, as the be-all, end-all. But I think it's a good idea to generally a good practice to see how the course played. Definitely emphasizing the putting, emphasizing the par fours since there are 12 of them here, things of that nature. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at a little bit of these strokes gained numbers. We'll go off the tee. I am going to use the fairways difficult to hit filter just for tonight, and then I might adjust as we go forward this week. But your top off the tee players when fairways are difficult to hit the past 2 years: Keith Mitchell, Adam Scott, Kevin Yu, Rory, Corey Connors, Hayden Buckley, Shane Lowry, Tyler Duncan, Cam Young, and Johnny Vegas are your top 10 in terms of off the tee when fairways are difficult to hit. We'll remove that filter, definitely narrow our search here. In the last 24 rounds, our top approach players in the field this week: Corey Connors, Akshay Bhatia, Ryan Moore, Adam Svensson, Aaron Rai, Shane Lowry, Rory, Keith Mitchell, Alex Noren, and Sahith Theegala. And just in terms of saving interest or saving time, let's just go ahead and take a look at putting. I won't take a look at around the green just yet. We know we're on bent greens, so we're definitely going to filter on bent. And if I bring up the historic conditions, remember we haven't seen this since 2019. This is listed as POA. We saw the GCSA tournament fact sheet. They are bent. But they played to average. So if you want to look at average bent green putting, by all means, go ahead. I cannot confirm or say with 100% certainty that these will be average speed this week. So we're just going to look at bent green putting. But if you wanted to take it a step further, you could look at average, as all 4 rounds played to average in 2019. But in the past 2 years or 36 rounds, your top putters on bent greens have been Sahith Theegala, Mav McNeely, Sam Burns, Justin Suh, Eric Cole, Harry Hall, Richie Wierenski, Aaron Baddeley, Mackenzie Hughes, and Bo Hostler. We're not going to be doing the tournament history, as we'd only be looking at 2019. So Rory, Lowry, Kuchar, we'd only be looking at this year, since 2022 and 2023 were held at different venues. Therefore, there is no early look file. And I really want to save going into that leaderboard tomorrow for the Data Dive show. But I'll show it tonight. But we're really going to dig into this tomorrow in the Data Dive show, figure out what played well, and the players in the field this week who are excelling at the metrics that played well in 2019. Just a quick look. I mean, my goodness, look at all these numbers in the putting: 6, 9, 7.5, 8, 7.5, 6. So Whether you want to look at average speed bent greens or just bent greens in general, yeah, putting was a big deal in 2019, and I have a feeling it's going to be a big deal again this year. So again, a little bit of a shorter show, not a couple of things that I'm excluding just because I don't feel comfortable going all the way back to 2019 since it's 5 years ago, and only gathering the 1 year of data for an early look file. Instead, we'll just kind of go through it tomorrow in the Data Dive show. But I want to thank Derek and Darnell for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully, we're going to get on the right track this week. Seems like at least the three of us struggled. I know Gabe did not have a very good Charles Schwab challenge either. Doesn't seem like many people were on Davis Riley. But a reminder, if you had success for the Charles Schwab challenge, if you had Davis Riley, if you had various outrights or placements that hit, let me know in chat or in the comments. Would love to be able to shout you out. Shout out any members of the community who have success. So thanks to you two for jumping in chat. Thanks to everybody else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, and supports the channel. Love what I do, giving you a statistician and data analyst's view of what he sees. We had a very, very successful PGA championship, and then almost gave all of that back for the Charles Schwab. But the goal is to try to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Again, reminder, with the uniqueness of the changing venues and whatnot, no research tomorrow over on social media, so I'll be quote unquote dark until the stream tomorrow night, where we're going to be digging in quite a bit more into Hamilton and the players in the field this week. So for all the wagers that you made this week for the Charles Schwab Challenge, for all the DFS contests you played this week for the Charles Schwab Challenge, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.